it's tough, right? Because we're balancing politics and we're balancing the lived experience that people around us are having. Whether it's our organization, whether it's our employees that are impacted, their families, and people want to sit outside of political conversations. But what's not political is how our surroundings affect individuals. That's not political.
This is a Leadify podcast.
Hey friends, welcome to season 2 of Mad and Lucy Mind the Gap. I'm Mad, pronouns she, her, and I'm so glad to be back with you. This season we're focusing on how people lead, communicate, and stay connected when conversations get hard. At work, in communities, in everyday moments where the stakes suddenly feel high and there isn't a clear or comfortable path forward.
And I'm Lucy, pronouns she, her. Each episode, we'll be talking with people who are practicing these skills in real time. Today's conversation starts us off by exploring what it means to mind the gap when trust is fragile, how we navigate tension, disagreement, and high emotion without defaulting to silence, defensiveness, or easy answers.
And we couldn't imagine a better way to open our season than with our guest today, Darcie Baumann. She works in spaces where communication is public, emotional, and deeply consequential. Darcie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Darcie Baumann. I use she, her pronouns. However, I am not elated or offended by any pronouns. A little bit about myself. Oh, yeah, I did job hopping before job hopping was cool. But it's all things that I've learned so much from and kind of brought me where I am right now. I started in manufacturing and worked up to, I did quality and dot control systems for med device and automotive and regulated industries, which then led me into technical writing. And I went back to college as an adult and a single mom and graduated in 2017 with a bachelor's in leadership and a minor in nonprofit leadership and a certificate in technical communication. I have the nonprofit leadership part because I started volunteering with Twin Cities Pride in 2008. And I loved it. I loved that volunteer experience. I loved the organization and what it was doing. And I wanted to be able to help more. So I started taking nonprofit as just so I could learn more about it. I was the first female and the first person of color to chair Twin Cities Pride, which is the largest free pride in the United States. And that's what led me to what I do today. And that's work with leadership and organizations. A big thing is really helping folks create the organization that they want based on their values. And I love it.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Darcie. We're super excited to have this conversation with you. And, before we get into the ideas, I would love to ground us in your lived context. So from my understanding, you're working right now in environments where emotions are high and trust is strained and conversations are happening very publicly. And we also know that leadership shows up at a lot of levels in moments like this, right? As individuals, as people with an organizational voice, and as organizations themselves. So I'm really curious, from where you sit, can you talk a little bit about the kind of spaces that you're working in and what it's been like to navigate this kind of moment?
Again, thank you for having me today. This is the perfect time for this kind of a conversation, right? Right now, I'm working in a lot of nonprofit spaces, and with the state of the world and everything that's going on, I think most of my work, it's actually having those conversations with just individuals that I come across. Now, I'm in Minnesota, so everything is very high. There's a lot of tension, right? With nonprofits, it's a matter of the changing world, how they're going to talk about things, what they're going to do with their messaging. Are their goals, current now? We're having big jumps in what we're doing in the world, right? Are their goals the same, right? What do we talk about? What do we not talk about? And just having those kind of conversations as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Really important conversations and questions to answer, right? I'm curious, like, as someone kind of occupying those two spaces, even just in your own experience as well, like, how are you feeling kind of navigating all of that?
It's tough, right? Because we're balancing politics and we're balancing the lived experience that people around us are having. Whether it's our organization, whether it's our employees are impacted, their families, and people want to sit outside of political conversations. But what's not political is how our surroundings affect individuals. That's not political, right? How they affect our employees, how they affect our coworkers. Those things in themselves are not political because that's someone's existence.
Wow. I love the way you put that.
Yeah.
And for me, that's how I try to explain it to folks. Like when you're trying to say, what should we talk about? What should we not talk about? Well, when it's affecting someone's existence, those are the things that you talk about, right? Now, whether they're caused by something political, that's another conversation. Right? That's another conversation to have at whatever time. But always understand that, we're looking at our values and our missions and as individuals, as organizations, and how we're going to make that flow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, I see the gears turning over there.
I see Madeline's going too.
Well, it's like, this is my life, people. This is my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And it's tough when, especially in leadership roles, folks in leadership roles have different privileges than the people they lead. They have different privileges. They also have different burdens.
I was going to say different responsibilities, maybe.
It is responsibilities, but sometimes they're burdens. And I say that from a leadership point of view, when we're in trying times and unprecedented times, who are you going to talk to?
Yeah.
That's the hard part, is trying to make decisions in times when you don't have a coworker, a friend, someone you work out with that has gone through the same thing, right? Yeah. I've done that in other positions where we were going through something that was it was hard, and no other organization had gone through it before. So the decisions we made weren't always right. They weren't always perfect. And honestly, as a leader, that was one time where I learned a ton, but it made me a better leader. And you have to wade through what do we need to do? What do we want to do? When is the best time to say something? And understanding that saying nothing is saying something.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we talk about things, just to think about the folks that are impacted and have conversations with them. And you don't have to know everything. It's okay not to know everything. And it's even better if you say, I don't know everything. Help me, because that gives folks a voice.
Love that. I love that.
Well, and it's made me think a little bit also, Darcie, about, I'll just speak for myself, right? When I think about what my values are, those values were shaped in a very specific time and place. So it's like you don't even know what's important to you until a new situation presents itself. And it's like, how do I apply the values, right, that I know I have to this? Yeah. None of them really apply because I've never been faced. I've never been tested. So, Darcie, given that context, when people are communicating in the environments where it's, yes, we're all being tested, but some people are being tested more in your face, right? So in those environments, especially people who feel a sense of responsibility, whether or not they have a formal leadership role, what do you see as the biggest disconnect between what they think or what they think they're doing and how their messages actually land. So it's kind of like the gap between the intent and the impact.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good one. Because I think what's happening a lot of times now is people are having to deal with things that they haven't had exposure to before. So I think where people are kind of missing the point here is when they're trying to speak for somebody instead of trying to speak about themselves and what they know, right? When they're trying to speak for a community or speak for someone. And when you communicate, making sure that that door is always open, and in your communication, saying things in a way that may be open-ended, saying things in a way that from what I know or from my lived experience, right? One big phrase that I have been saying a ton lately, especially with folks that have different viewpoints than I do, is we can both be in the same place and we can both have a lived experience, but your opinion on my lived experience doesn't change my experience.
Your opinion doesn't change my experience.
As a brown person, I can be in my small town, walk along and have a different lived experience than a white person walking around my small town. You know, as a lesbian, I can have a different experience than, someone else standing right next to me in that same point and time. But you have your lived experience, but my opinion on your experience doesn't change your opinion. Your opinion on what things should look like for me doesn't make that a reality for me. That's that gap, right? That's that gap of thinking of someone else's experience and not speaking for someone else's experience.
I love that distinction. And, it reminds me of a phrase that I heard in college that I think really kind of is like one of the foundational mottos in my life, which is things are as real as they are and their consequences. And I feel like what you're saying kind of really speaks to that as well. Kind of acknowledging the reality of someone's lived experience, even if you can't fully put yourself in their shoes and understand it firsthand. Yep. I think that's so valuable to have that mindset. Yep.
Wait, can you repeat that, Lucy? The motto?
Yeah, it's called "Things are as real as they are in their consequences." I think it might be formally called the Thomas theorem. It's been a minute since I've been in a classroom, but that's the part that stuck to me.
I'm going to have to look that up. Love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that one too.
So if we want to close the gap between our intent and our impact, now this is what I think I heard. So correct me if I'm wrong. We can't actually know what's going on for somebody else. So really, we should just shut up unless we're asking questions and being curious and trying to understand.
What we can speak to is the circumstances surrounding individuals and surrounding people. We can speak to that. We can't speak to their experience, but we can speak to the circumstances. If X is happening, how is it going to affect Y? Okay. And what is my part in that? And what can I do about that? You don't know exactly how it impacts somebody, but you can find out. And I'll give you an example. I've done a lot of work with the Minnesota Twins, right? And the person I was working with said, "Hey, Darcie, we're having this diversity get together, invite anybody you want to." Okay. I've been to them before. And you know what, who I didn't see? I didn't see our deaf community. I didn't see an ASL interpreter. And so I said, "Hey, Miguel, I invited the Minnesota Deaf Queers and we need an interpreter."
Wow.
As someone who is not deaf, I know folks in the community, right? So I'll invite them. Now, what do you need from me? Well, we need interpreters. Interpreters are two people, not one. Deaf interpreters are different than other ASL interpreters. A deaf interpreter is a team of two. It's a hearing person that you usually don't see, and the deaf person is doing the interpreting. That's, again, not my lived experience, but I can introduce these folks and I can advocate for them and I can say, these experiences are different. What can we do? And that's one way that you can be a part of things, right? And it doesn't have to be your community. So as we do these things and as we think of it, bring in the folks that you think may be impacted. If you don't know who's even impacted, talk it out with someone, and I think that's one of the hardest things that I have worked with leaders on and especially in corporate leaders in corporate America, how communities and how different folks in there that they employ or that they lead are impacted by different things. The best way I can say that is look at buildings, right? Are they accessible for everybody? They're not, because they were built by able-bodied people. That doesn't mean all buildings should be built that way. I'm sorry. That's a really good way to think about things. Shouldn't always be the same just because they've been done that way.
I really appreciate that, Darcie, because, especially just because it's such an empowering way to think about it, especially when you are in the middle of those situations and you do want to support, but you don't necessarily feel like your lived experience lends you, I guess, sometimes even the credibility or the right to speak in that way, but still wanting to support, that there's always a gap to be filled in that way. Especially now, I know for me as a Gen Z, trying to figure out how do I articulate my points of view and my values in a way that is not going to put a target on my back. Just having this fear of cancel culture and being in a position like this where people are watching me. I think that's a really empowering way to think about it, that you even if you can't speak from someone's experience, you can advocate and articulate the reality of their situation and fill those gaps as you can within your own influence and power. I love that.
Well, and Lucy, think of it this way. What happens if I don't speak up?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are the implications if I don't say anything? What are the implications if I don't speak up? In my case, if I would have never spoke up, the deaf community wouldn't have been at these events that they absolutely love.
I love that way of thinking. That's
So when we're doing stuff and you're wondering, should I say something? Should I not say something? If you're looking on a personal level, what happens if I don't say something? What can happen if I do say something? Right? What's the best thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? Right? I think you get more challenging when you're a leader of an organization. When does my organization say something? Right? But you can think of it the same way. Absolutely. What happens if I don't say something?
That's so powerful. I love that.
When you say something and when you lead with your heart and when you lead with your values, you can't go wrong. You're not going to make everybody happy all the time. You're just not. But you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I love that. I love that way of thinking. And, it's kind of an unfortunate truth, right? That it's something that a lot of us are learning, myself included, right? Figuring out what does that mean for us? And just kind of falling into this mindset of neutrality is the safest option when, especially we're in these politically or emotionally charged moments, right? And I think about your own experience, especially Darcie, where you're working in spaces like you shared, where neutrality is interpreted as taking a side, that saying nothing is saying something. And I'm curious, when we think about this, what, from your perspective, do you think leaders often misunderstand about neutrality in these moments? And how can they begin to recognize when staying neutral is actually the thing that's eroding the trust? How are you making those decisions?
For me, again, it comes down to what happens if I don't say something. If I am a leader of an organization, especially, in these political times, how is what is happening affecting my employees? Right? And if I have clients, how is what is happening affecting my clients? How do I want my organization to look? What am I trying to build? And if I'm trying to help build leaderships, right? If I'm trying to help build those things, staying neutral isn't helpful because that's not leading, right? You need to decide where you want to go and what you want to do. Now, I know it's difficult when you're an organizational leader and maybe what the organization decides to do isn't what you decide to do in your heart, but then that's a decision that you have to make. And just because the organization decides this today doesn't mean that you can't help shape it for the future, right? So as we look at like our political climate, what are you losing by saying nothing? The folks that you want to have around you and the folks that you want to impact, what is saying nothing doing for them?
Wow.
And what is saying nothing doing to them?
Yeah. So what I find really hard just for myself, and I expect is hard for other leaders, but also people navigating these times, these without any real authority, per se. And I count myself there because what authority, what is that even? But we're all just human, right? And there's a lot of fear. So afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of backlash. We don't want to make things worse. We don't want to attract negative attention to ourselves. I mean, it's what you were saying earlier, Lucy, cancel culture. But at scale, let's say an organization, you could be impacting hundreds of people. So how do we kind of stay present, keep our wits about us, right? It's like I find myself unable to even think sometimes, which is what fear does. We know that. But how can we stay present even as we have fear without just shutting down or scuttling away? All the fight or flight, freeze, appease. Darcie, help us. Tell us what to do.
Well, it depends. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to, and especially like, that's the biggest fear right now is that cancel culture is huge, right? And especially in these political climates, right? Where is the real harm? Where is the everyday harm in this? And what can I do to negate that harm? Whatever you do a couple takes in your brain and write it out. And whatever you do, say it out loud. A really great thing if you want to type something out, type it out like in Word or whatever, and then turn your reader on that reads it. And listen back to it and like, how does that really sound? Does that really sound okay? And today we have a lot of tools, right? We have ChatGPT, we have AI that you can plug stuff into. Hey, this is my idea. How is this going to harm somebody?
Yeah.
Right? Or how can this help somebody? Or run it by someone. If you need a tool, use a tool, right? Especially in unprecedented times when people haven't gone through it. At least, like if you do it like a PR firm, they can help you create that message, whether it's you saying it, whether it's writing it, and something that you can stand by.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. So don't make assumptions. Check it out. Check your thinking. Use tools. Do iterations.
Yep.
Iterate.
Yeah, just learning how to say things shorter, because the more words you use, the more apt someone is to pick it apart, right? Get to the point. And again, be compassionate, right? You can be professional and be compassionate. But yeah, find someone like myself that's going to pick it apart for you. Or someone from a different community. If you're worried about someone canceling you, find someone, or find someone in your network or that knows someone or is willing to take a look at it, which again becomes very hard when you're in a leadership position and you're at a high level and people can't know stuff. That's where I found myself at one point. Like I couldn't tell the public everything, right? And it works that way sometimes. I can't tell the public everything, but yet we have to make decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a simple way of thinking about it, right? Like if you don't know, just talk to someone who does know, someone you can trust, who will lovingly pick apart everything that you're saying and support you. Like, that's so valuable, though. I love that that's your superpower, Darcie. And I'm curious, just to like circle back a little bit, like you talk about your PR experience and working with someone who helped you through that. I'm thinking from my perspective as someone who doesn't necessarily have the ability to go and like find a PR specialist to like help me work through my life and figure out what I stand for and all those things. But what do you think would be a good like step number one for anyone who wants to just feel more clarity the way that you felt after that experience?
That it really, everything that you're going to do is going to come down to your personal values and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Always, right? Does it fit with who I am? Does it fit with what I'm trying to accomplish? Am I being helpful? Mm-hmm. Look for the helpers. Am I being one of those helpers? Mm-hmm. Think of how would you want someone to say this to you? Think of why you want to do it, right? Do I want to speak up because I want to make a change for myself? Do I want to speak up because I want to make a change for someone else? And think of other folks around you and how that could affect them. Am I being, again, does it match my values, and am I being helpful?
Love that.
You know,
so simple, but so helpful, so grounding. I love that.
It's pretty much, it sounds like a perfect guide for anything we do. But I know I'm going a little off the path here, but I just want to check with you, Darcie. Is there anything else that you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that other people want to hear your voice.
Oh.
Because people sit there like, do I say something? Do I say something? Do I not? And you don't know who you might support just by saying something. Mm-hmm. You don't know who needed to hear what you have to say. You don't know who maybe didn't know something until you said it.
You know, I mean, I was teasing earlier, except that it's also true that people are looking for direction from someone who knows what they're talking about. And I think you've really offered that.
I think a lot of times I know I've learned a lot of things through failure, and we can't be afraid to fail. Mm-hmm. Right? We're going to fail. That's just the reality of it. You are going to fail. You are not going to fulfill everybody's expectations. It's really important that we ask folks, what does better look like for you? Because to me, better looks like this, but what does better look like to you? And then have that conversation of what it takes to get to better. And, okay, if this is what it looks like for you, how do we get there? That does two things. It helps you understand what better looks like for them. But it also helps them understand either one, why it's going to take longer to get there, why you can't do it right now, what you can do right now. But what logistically, how do we make that happen? You know, right now we can talk about IDs for voting. Okay. But I want IDs for voting. Okay. I can agree with you for IDs for voting as long as your 92-year-old grandmother can get an ID. So logistically, what does that take? Does that take making them free? And talking through those pieces? Because we can talk about big ideas, but how do we get to those ideas? I think that's a part that really helps people understand each other when we take a stand on something, right?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thank you so much, Darcie. This conversation was absolutely amazing. I love that this is the first episode of season 2. I'm so grateful we got to meet you and spend some time with you today.
It really helped put words to what a lot of people, including me, are thinking about and carrying right now, whether they're leading, supporting, or just trying to stay in relationships when things feel heavy and confusing and messed up.
We're so grateful for the way you named what it takes to stay present and engage when things feel tense or uncertain.
So, to everyone listening, thanks for being here with us as we start season 2. Until next time, keep minding the gap, taking care of yourselves and each other.